Elvis Nation, get ready to lose it because the king is hitting the big screen like never before with epic Elvis Presley in concert.
After 5 decades, the world was given a chance to witness what no one thought possible: an AI scan of Elvis Presley's final resting place. The king of rock and roll, known for his timeless voice and electrifying presence, passed away in 1977. But rumors and speculations about his death and what may lie beneath his casket have haunted fans for years. Could the truth have been hidden all along? For 51 years, his gravesite remained a place of mystery, with few daring to ask the question, what's inside? What if technology, specifically AI, could reveal what we've all been waiting for? A newly revealed video promises just that: an AI scan of Elvis Presley's casket. In the next moments, you'll see exactly what the scan uncovered. But the truth might not be what we expect. Long before AI could scan caskets, there was Elvis Presley. But how much of his life and death was buried in secrecy? Elvis Presley's life was a whirlwind of fame, fortune, and controversy. He redefined music, rock and roll, and the very essence of stardom. His rise from humble beginnings to global superstardom in the 1950s seemed like the ultimate success story. But as the years wore on, Elvis struggled with the pressures of fame, weight gain, prescription drug dependency, and a changing music landscape that left him clinging to the past. In August 1977, Elvis Presley passed away at just 42, his death officially ruled as a heart attack. But the world struggled to come to terms with the loss of the king. Fans and conspiracy theorists alike soon filled the void left by his passing. Some believed that Elvis faked his death, while others claimed there was a darker, more sinister reason behind his sudden death. Perhaps even murder. Despite the speculation, no one had concrete answers. The world was left in the dark, and those who dared to dig deeper were met with silence. In the years following his death, another question began to surface. What about his tomb? Graceland became a pilgrimage site, but few questioned whether the body beneath the casket truly belonged to the king. The tomb itself was kept under lock and key, with few seeing the inside. Some believed it was merely a symbolic resting place. Others thought Elvis's body might not have even been there at all, or that something else had been buried with him. The rumors lingered, but there was little evidence to support them. It wasn't until the arrival of advanced technology that the mystery took a new turn. The AI scan of Elvis's casket became a game-changer. For the first time, scientists had the ability to look beyond the tombstone without disturbing the grave. Could this AI technology unlock answers to questions that had remained unanswered for decades? This wasn't just about a body in a casket. It was about uncovering the secrets that had been kept hidden for 51 years. Was Elvis truly buried in Graceland? And what might be lying in that tomb, concealed from the world? The first scans began, and what they revealed was something no one expected. Artificial intelligence is changing the world in ways we could have never predicted. From diagnosing diseases to creating art, AI's potential is only just beginning to be explored. Now, this groundbreaking technology was used to scan a 51-year-old tomb. Using a method called terahertz imaging, the AI sends waves into the casket, analyzing the objects inside without disturbing the grave. The beauty of this technology lies in its non-invasive nature. No need to disturb the sacred resting place of a legend. The waves penetrate the materials and bounce back, revealing hidden details in the process. No one knew how much data the AI could retrieve, or what it could reveal about the remains of one of the most famous figures in history. As the scan began, scientists were unsure of what to expect. The tomb had remained untouched for over 5 decades, Would the AI provide any meaningful insights? Or would it merely confirm what was already assumed? What if the scan exposed something unexpected, something that no one had even considered? The anticipation was palpable. No matter how advanced technology gets, there are always unknowns. The first images started to appear on the screen, ghostly outlines emerging from the darkness. The grave that had been sealed for over 50 years now lay open to the eyes of modern technology. The images started as vague shapes, but as the AI refined its analysis, the details began to sharpen. At first, it seemed like a normal coffin, but was that really all? As the AI deepened its scan, the answers began to materialize. What appeared to be an ordinary casket now presented unfamiliar features, anomalies that challenged what had been known. Could this discovery shift the entire narrative around Elvis Presley's final resting place? Was there more to his death than the world had ever imagined? The more the AI revealed, the more questions arose. What was really inside that tomb? The AI's deeper scan presented an anomaly. The expected outlines of Elvis Presley's body did not match what was anticipated. What appeared at first to be a clear image of a man in repose began to fragment into unfamiliar shapes. A new object, hidden for decades, began to appear beside the body. Could it be a coffin within a coffin, or something else entirely? As the scan went on, strange inconsistencies emerged. The images didn't line up with what the public had been told for years. The first sign of an issue came when the AI picked up an odd shape beside the body. It was large, long, and wrapped in what appeared to be fabric, but it didn't seem to fit with the idea of a traditional burial. Was it possible that something else had been placed in the grave? Perhaps another object, or even another body, hidden away for reasons no one could explain? The AI continued its work, drawing new, clearer outlines. The body of Elvis was still faintly visible, but the hidden object beside him remained a mystery. What if this was evidence of a cover-up? Was someone trying to hide the truth from the public? Or was this simply an artifact of the burial process? Something that had been placed there decades ago, with no sinister motive behind it. As the scan went deeper into the casket, more questions piled up. What did this strange shape mean? Was it possible that the casket had been tampered with over the years? Had someone, perhaps a close confidant or family member, hidden something of value alongside Elvis? The closer the AI got to the truth, the more unsettling the discovery became. It was clear that what lay beneath the tombstone wasn't exactly what everyone had assumed. The deeper the AI scan went, the more unsettling the discoveries became. The strange object beside Elvis wasn't just a random item. It was something far more deliberate. As the scans continued, the outlines of the hidden object became clearer. It wasn't just any artifact. It appeared to be a large, sealed compartment placed inside the casket. The precise nature of this compartment was still unclear, but one thing was certain. It wasn't part of a typical burial process. It was something intentionally hidden. The implications of this discovery were staggering. Why would such a compartment exist? Could it have been placed there to hide something of significance? Was Elvis buried with something, or someone, concealed away from the public eye? The AI scan revealed even more. Within the compartment, there were what appeared to be folded materials, perhaps documents or items wrapped in cloth. But why were they hidden so carefully? What could have been so important that it required being placed beside him, possibly to protect it from the prying eyes of the world? Why was Elvis's casket not just a place of rest, but now seemingly a vault containing something more? As the AI's work continued, the images became sharper, more detailed, revealing even more about the compartment's contents. The folded materials inside it did not appear to be ordinary. They seemed to be deliberately placed with care, like something meant to be preserved for a future generation. Was it a message from someone close to Elvis, left behind in secret? Could it have been a letter, a journal, or even a record of something crucial about Elvis's life, death, or legacy that had never been revealed? The possibilities seemed endless. The first question that arose was whether the compartment had been added recently or if it had been there since the original burial. If it had been placed there recently, who could have done it and why? Was there an effort to obscure some aspect of Elvis's life or death, perhaps to protect the legacy of the king? Or was this just another piece of the puzzle, a forgotten part of a legend that was never meant to be revealed? It was clear that the AI scan wasn't just uncovering a typical burial. It was revealing a history that had been deliberately concealed. This wasn't a simple casket. It was an enigma, one that had been carefully preserved for decades, hidden from the world's gaze. And now, after all these years, the technology had finally given the world a glimpse of what had been kept in the shadows. But what was inside that compartment? The truth was so close now, closer than it had ever been. The world could finally know. The answer lay within the sealed materials, but as the AI scans progressed, they only raised more questions. The world was left wondering, what did Elvis's casket truly contain? And why was it kept secret for so long? The discovery sent shockwaves through the world, and the implications were immediately felt. What could this compartment mean? For decades, the story of Elvis Presley's death and burial had been set in stone, until now. The AI scan had unlocked something that no one could have predicted, revealing that the casket held more than just a body. And it wasn't just an ordinary discovery. It was a key to a hidden narrative, a missing chapter of the king's life that was deliberately obscured for years. What could be inside this compartment? The speculation grew with each passing minute. The world held its breath as the contents of the compartment were revealed. Inside, carefully folded and sealed in cloth, were papers, old yellowed documents that looked ancient, yet surprisingly intact. It was clear that whatever was in the casket wasn't just memorabilia. It was something of much greater importance, something that had been intentionally placed there. But what did these papers say? Were they notes from Elvis himself, perhaps a final message to his fans? Or were they something more sinister? An account of something kept hidden, a secret that could shake the foundations of Elvis's legacy. As the documents were scanned, a chilling realization began to set in. The papers contained writing, a handwriting that wasn't Elvis's own. It was a letter, dated shortly before his death, from someone close to him, but not his family. The letter described feelings of guilt, secrecy, and the burden of keeping a monumental secret. The more the AI revealed, the clearer it became. Elvis Presley's death, his legacy, and everything that had been told about his passing was now called into question. The letter made cryptic references to a hidden truth that had to be kept quiet for the sake of the king's image. It spoke of powerful people, of decisions made behind closed doors, and of a reality that was buried alongside Elvis. And that wasn't all. The letter hinted at another body, someone who had been part of the mystery surrounding his death. This wasn't just a confession. It was a revelation that completely upended the story of Elvis Presley's final days. The world now had a glimpse into a world of deception, of cover-ups, and of the lengths people went to in order to maintain an image at all costs. The truth about Elvis Presley's death And his final resting place was no longer just a conspiracy. It was a reality that had been buried, literally and figuratively, for over 50 years. And now, as the documents continued to be revealed, it was clear that the world had been living with a lie. The world wasn't ready for the truth. And perhaps, just perhaps, the secret was never meant to come out at all. As the letter continued to unfold, the true weight of what was being revealed began to sink in. The implications were immense, far beyond what anyone could have imagined. The writing, though cryptic, began to paint a picture of a reality that had been kept from the world for decades. This wasn't just a celebrity death. This was a calculated effort to control a narrative, to protect the image of Elvis Presley, and to hide a deeply personal truth that had been buried with him. The mention of another body was particularly chilling. What did this mean? Was there someone else involved in Elvis's death? Or was this a body that had been replaced to divert attention from the truth? The letter hinted at a cover-up, a deliberate attempt to make the public believe one story while hiding the real events behind closed doors. The fact that it had been placed in Elvis's casket, alongside his remains, suggested that whoever wrote it felt the need to confess, to reveal something that had been kept hidden for far too long. But why now? Why had this message remained sealed for so many years, only to be discovered through the lens of AI technology? It became clear that the document wasn't just a letter. It was a confession, a piece of the puzzle that explained why Elvis Presley's death had never fully made sense. This was no longer just about rumors or conspiracy theories. The AI scan had uncovered proof that Elvis's passing was far more complicated than anyone had ever believed. And what's more, the letter didn't just point to a singular event. It referenced a series of decisions, events, and actions that were meant to control the legacy of the king. It mentioned powerful forces who had ensured that the true story would never come to light, no matter the cost. The AI had uncovered a hidden truth, and it was slowly unraveling a web of secrets that had been carefully constructed for over 5 decades. The world's perception of Elvis Presley had been shaped by stories, by media, by a carefully curated image that was meant to preserve the king's legacy. But what if that image was built on a foundation of lies? And what if the truth, Elvis's real story, was far darker than anyone had ever imagined? As the world began to process the magnitude of this revelation, the consequences were immediate and profound. The media, fans, and historians alike scrambled to make sense of the new reality that had been unearthed from Elvis Presley's casket. For decades, the king of rock and roll had been presented to the world as a flawless icon, his legacy cemented in history. But now, that carefully constructed image was being questioned, piece by piece. The documents revealed not only a hidden truth about Elvis's final days, but also a larger, more disturbing narrative about how the public's perception of him had been shaped. The letter spoke of powerful figures who had been involved in crafting the king's image and controlling the narrative surrounding his death. These were not just industry professionals. They were individuals who had a vested interest in keeping the truth from ever surfacing. What had Elvis known? And why had he allowed such a carefully guarded lie to persist? Was it fear of what the truth could do to his legacy? Or had he been complicit in the cover-up all along? The letter also hinted at the presence of another individual, someone whose connection to Elvis had never been acknowledged publicly. This person, possibly even more central to the events surrounding Elvis's death than anyone had ever known, had been kept hidden from the public eye. The name was never revealed, but the implications were clear. There was someone out there who knew everything about what really happened, and they had been silenced. The question that now loomed large was whether Elvis's family or inner circle had been aware of this hidden compartment and its contents. Had they known what was inside all along? Or was this a discovery that no one had anticipated? The documents didn't just raise questions. They raised suspicions about who might have been involved in hiding the truth and why they had gone to such great lengths. As this new chapter of Elvis Presley's life and death was revealed, the world was left to grapple with the reality that their perception of the king had been built on something far more complicated than anyone had imagined. The truth about his death, buried for decades, was now in the open, and with it came the burden of reckoning with the dark secrets of the past. But there was still one final question that needed answering. Who was responsible for the cover-up, and why? As the documents continued to be analyzed, the reality of what had been concealed for so long started to take shape. The more the world learned about the hidden compartment, the deeper the questions grew. The AI scan had uncovered not just one mystery, but an entire web of secrets tied to Elvis Presley's death. Secrets that went beyond conspiracy theories and into the realm of undeniable truth. Elvis, once an untouchable legend, was now being revealed as a man who had been buried with a truth too dangerous to tell. The legacy of Elvis Presley, shaped by decades of adoration and myth, was now threatened by the very people who had once worked to protect it. There was a stark realization. Elvis's death wasn't the final chapter. It was the beginning of an even bigger story, one that had remained locked away in a casket for over 50 years. What could this mean for the millions of fans who had spent decades idolizing him, who had built their own version of Elvis based on the stories and the image that the media had sold them? How would they react when the truth finally broke free from the darkness? This revelation was not just a scandal, it was a reckoning for the public's understanding of one of the world's most iconic figures. The letter that had been found in the casket now sat at the center of the storm, its cryptic words challenging everything fans and historians thought they knew about Elvis. It suggested that he had not been the victim of a singular tragic moment, but instead a man who had been caught in a complex web of power, secrecy, and manipulation. He had been a pawn in a game far larger than himself, one played by people who had the means and the motive to control his death and his legacy. And the more the letter was decoded, the more it became clear that the truth wasn't just about Elvis Presley. It was about the system that had built him up and then buried him. As the world tried to digest this, there was another layer to this discovery that continued to ripple outward. The hidden compartment in Elvis's casket wasn't the only secret being uncovered. The AI scans hinted at a vast network of connections, some of which had been entirely ignored or erased from history. In the years following Elvis's death, many of the people closest to him had vanished from the public eye. What if they had been silenced because of what they knew? What if they were part of the conspiracy to keep the truth hidden? With each new piece of information revealed, the stakes got higher. The world had been living with an illusion for half a century. And now, that illusion was crumbling. What was left in the wake of the AI scan wasn't just the story of Elvis Presley's death. It was the story of the people who built the myth and did everything in their power to preserve it, even at the cost of truth. As the world grappled with the revelations from the AI scan, the true impact of these discoveries began to unfold. What had started as an intriguing investigation into the king's final resting place had turned into a global reckoning. The image of Elvis Presley that had been carefully crafted by the media, his family, and his inner circle for decades was now shattered. His legacy, once untouchable, was being redefined. Fans and critics alike were forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the king of rock and roll. What had been revealed from the AI scan was more than just a hidden compartment. It was an entire narrative of manipulation, secrecy, and hidden truths. The letter found in the casket spoke of the efforts to protect Elvis's image at all costs, of the powerful figures behind the scenes who had shaped the world's perception of him. For years, the truth had been locked away, buried with Elvis. But now, with the AI technology unveiling what had been concealed, the world had to face the consequences of this long-buried secret. Elvis Presley had always been a symbol of greatness. But he was also a man, one who struggled with his own demons and was caught in a system that used him as a pawn in a much larger game. The truth about his death, his final days, and the conspiracy surrounding his casket was something the world hadn't been ready for. But now, there was no turning back. The AI scan had exposed the dark underbelly of the Elvis myth, forcing the world to confront not just the man, but the legacy that had been crafted around him. This was no longer just a story about a rock legend. It was a cautionary tale about the lengths people will go to in order to protect the stories they tell. As the final pieces of the puzzle were revealed, there was an undeniable sense of closure, but also a deep sense of loss. The Elvis the world had known, untouchable, immortal, was gone. In his place, a new understanding of the king began to emerge, one that was more complex, more human, and ultimately more tragic than anyone could have anticipated. His legacy would live on in the music, in the memories, and in the story of a man who was more than just a legend. But the truth, once buried beneath layers of secrecy, was now out in the open. And with it came the knowledge that Elvis Presley, the king, had never truly been free. The world would never look at Elvis Presley the same way again. For decades, his story had been shaped by the people around him, by those who had controlled the narrative of his life and death. But with the truth now exposed, the king's legacy had been irrevocably altered. What had once been a flawless image of a rock and roll icon was now marred by secrets, cover-ups, and hidden truths. The AI scan had pulled back the curtain on a story that was far more complicated than anyone had ever known. Fans, critics, and historians who had admired Elvis from afar were now forced to reconcile the man they'd idolized with the complex, deeply troubled figure revealed in the documents. The truth wasn't just a revelation about Elvis's death. It was about the system that had built him, the people who had benefited from his fame, and the lengths they had gone to in order to keep the real story hidden. The letter found in the casket, once thought to be a mere curiosity, had proved to be a confession. A piece of history that explained the cover-up of Elvis's death, the manipulation of his image, and the deliberate silencing of those who might have told the truth. The letter's mention of a hidden body, a second life, hinted at a deeper conspiracy that went far beyond a celebrity death. It was a web of deception, with powerful people pulling the strings behind the scenes. And now, after more than 50 years, the truth was out. But what would the world do with it? Could the legacy of Elvis Presley be salvaged? Or was it forever tainted by the revelations that had emerged from his final resting place? The question loomed large, but perhaps the answer was already clear. Elvis's true legacy wasn't just in the music he created, but in the way the world would remember him, not as the untouchable king, but as a man who, for all his fame, was never truly free. The final truth was this: Elvis Presley's death was a far more complex and tragic event than anyone had ever imagined. His casket, once thought to hold only his remains, had held the key to unlocking the secrets of his final days, a truth that, once exposed, could never be undone. And now, the world would be left to reflect on the man behind the myth, the legend behind the lie, and the legacy of a king who had never truly escaped the shadows of his own fame.